name is Ravi Sahu, and I'm your host for today. And our today's speaker is Seth Burns from Nelson Brothers. Uh, I'm the founder and CEO of Istreos. A bit more about Istreos. What we do is we are a software solutions for drilling and mining applications, where we take care of any data that's collected by drones, turns them into a survey model, and then we have tools designed for drilling and blasting optimization, and then the post-blast analysis like fragmentation, and further to that, all the data can be brought together to run mine-to-mill optimization as well. We are currently present in about 800 sites in about more than a dozen countries where our platform is used. But for the purpose for today's session is really understanding and looking at data from the different view. We generate a lot of data. You probably are collecting data every day, but how you're applying it, that's what matters. But not only how you're applying it, how you can actually use it, as well as if you turn them into a different type of perspective, that's where you can gain and glean new type of insights and new type of operational development that you can generate. And that's what today's session is about. So without further ado, I would like to introduce our speaker for today's session, Seth Burns. Seth Burns graduated in 1996 from the University of Missouri-Rolla in mining engineering. He started his career in the industry working with El Dorado Chemical Company. They were an ammonium nitrate manufacturer that serviced the coal and quarry markets as an explosive service provider in the central and eastern United States. Seth also worked in a technical capacity for most of his career, and he had the opportunity to work with Orica, Nelson Brothers, and Midland Power Company. Seth is currently managing the Innovative Solutions Group for Nelson Brothers in Birmingham, Alabama. His current role allows him to evaluate new technologies and see how and where to integrate that technology into their current business. He is the facilitator between the present and the future. Seth loves encouraging ideas, sharing from the field up, and providing a platform for those ideas to be shared. Without further ado, Seth, thank you for today's session. Take it away.
Sure. Well, thank you, and thank you all for joining us today. Thank you for the opportunity, Ravi. And can you hear me okay? Are we good?
Loud and clear.
Okay, just making sure. It's a little different for me being on a webinar and not seeing people face to face, but as Ravi, as he was describing, just my current role, I really like to challenge me, but also just the people in our company and the people in the industry. It's an incredible industry, the mining, quarrying, blasting industry. I really enjoyed it a lot, and it's changed quite a bit. But today, I just really appreciate the opportunity to discuss this topic. It's something that is important to all of us in a lot of different ways, depending on where you're coming from and where you've been and where you're going, the things that you work with every day. But we all work with data, and technology is, as Ravi was describing, is changing rapidly, and it gives us a lot more opportunities. So today, my goal is really to give you some practical steps that I've experienced and walked through and currently walking through that help us to collect data, use data, see data differently, but then also challenge you to take some time and really step back and evaluate how you do things, evaluate what you're measuring, evaluate how you do it, and just kind of allow yourself to be free and creative. And we get wrapped up in everything that we do on a daily basis. And sometimes the daily grind prevents us from thinking outside the box. And I think that's something we don't want to lose. And so If I can get to the next slide here. What is data? How do we collect it? And what do we do with it? And those are kind of questions we all ask in different ways. Different data is different to all of us, but really it's just any information, good information, factual information that allows us to use it for making decisions, for reasoning, discussion, calculations. And so data can be a lot of different things. It's not just numbers. It's information, and there's a lot of ways to collect it. There's a lot of data out there. It can be overwhelming. So sometimes we don't view it in a very good light. We just think we don't need it. And so I want to look at how can we collect it to be better informed so we can make better decisions. But then also, once we collect it, what do we do with it? Are we just catching it to catch it, or do we have something in mind on what we want to produce with it? And in my world, sometimes you have to have it and have it right in front of you before you can begin to imagine what you can glean from the data. And so that's where we need a little help.
You have to let it all go, Neil. Fear, doubt, and disbelief. Worry, you are not.
So today, I hope we kind of wrap things up with, I want to leave you kind of in this I guess, view, kind of seeing things differently and just allowing your thinking to be a little more open and just excited about, the possibilities with what we can do with data and technology. So historically, collecting data has been, tough. We've been collecting data for a long time, and most of the time in even the recent past, it's been a lot of manual entry, manual collection of the data. If you wanted copies, it had to be repetition. You had to type it in multiple times, or you had to rewrite something. So it was very laborsome. And there was a lot of limitations. So there was limitations on sharing. You couldn't transfer data from one person to another, or from one source to another. Capturing the data was difficult. You had to be there. And now there's opportunities to do things where you don't have to be there. And then analyzing the data, that was all manual. And so now there's a lot more opportunities to hopefully collect the data that you need, where you can collect it one time and then you don't have to do it multiple times. You can collect it one time in a manner that allows you to share that data, and then also use the data, analyze the data, and view the data. So, with technology being out there, data is always available no matter what we're doing. There's data points that are important to us that we maybe want to track, measure, view, things like that. And there's a lot of technology out there, even that's not in our wheelhouse, but allows us to, maybe there's some connections that we can make between, a new technology and what we're doing now. And that's kind of one of the things that I pursue in my current role. But I still think there tends to be a gap between technology and data. Ravi recently wrote an article in a blog, how to achieve sustained value. But in that, I highlighted some of the key points here. But there was a study that was done, and it says there was a $370 billion opportunity for mining digitization by 2025. That's not very far away. And 70% of that value was projected to come from operational management improvements, using data to make better operational decisions. And it went on to get more detailed, and specifically reaching out in the mining industry, saying that it was struggling to capture it, and that mining is 30 to 40% less digitally mature than comparable industrial sectors, including automotive and chemical. So we've seen a lot of advancements in mining, and associated with that, the explosive industry. There's been a lot of advancements. We're doing a lot more with technology, but we're still behind other sectors. And so that means there's a lot of technology that we're not grabbing onto in order to, gain the benefits of what maybe technology could offer us. And so, again, just be open to taking a look at some of the things that I'm going to offer today. And some of them are right in front of you, and some of them are maybe a little outside the box. So how do we go forward? Well, it might be a lot closer than you think. So I'm going to start to share some practical stuff right after we do our first poll. You ready with that one, Ravi?
Yes, I just released our first poll, so if everybody can take 30 seconds or so to participate. How do you view data? And here I think just the perspective that everybody is trying to look is like, how not only the criticality or the importance of data is, but how the data plays an important role for your organization or a day-to-day routine work that you are doing. So we'll give it a few more seconds, and we'll wrap it up. It is very clear that it is extremely important.
Good.
It's more than 94%. So.
Well, I'm probably reaching the wrong crowd then.
Great. So I think we will wrap poll up here. So it's very clear that data is extremely important as the maturity curve for the mining that needs to be improved. So.
Well, good. Well, I'm glad you see it as extremely important, because I'm growing in my understanding all the time. And that, how important is it? Well, really, it's just, it's important to us in different ways, but it's important to us. We always want to be able to make better decisions. We always want to have the information to make better decisions. We always want to have the ability to capture the information. And so there's, efficiencies in how we do this. And so, one thing that I've run across over the last several years is something that was right under my nose. And that was something we're all very familiar with. Microsoft Office is a very well-known and widely used system. I was very familiar with, Word, Excel, Outlook, PowerPoint, and using those pieces of Microsoft Office, but just kind of on a whim, and digging around as Office began to, just migrate more towards online and offering more options and things like that. Just kind of stumbled into some more offerings that they have. And with the broad access that most of us have in terms of utilizing Microsoft Office, it's very common. This is all accessible to everyone. And so just by, kind of running across these available apps through the Office platform, began to do more investigating, looking into it, talking with people, doing research, and just found that there was several pieces of this that were going to be potentially very beneficial to us in collecting data. And so again, if you have access to this, then you have access to these tools that they've developed. And so as we began to dig in, we realized that through the Office platform, we were able to develop some basic apps. And really, the apps are one of your best tools for capturing data. So, if you run an app, other than like on your phone for playing games, in this sense, we're looking at a way for a user to capture data, to input the information that they need, and to capture it, and then be able to store that data. And so we've been able to develop apps for electronic blast reports, where our guys in the field capture this data in the field, whether it's on a laptop or an iPad. And so they're able to generate reports from that by capturing the data from that report in a digital way and storing that information in a way where it can be shared and used. We've also had the ability to, develop other apps like a drone management app. So as we fly more and more drones, we're keeping track of our flight logs and things like that. So these are apps that, we've worked through the Office platform to develop to capture data. We've also used SharePoint. SharePoint is part of Office, and it's just a data storage and management platform, and so, or piece app within Office. So our shot reports can get stored here. As you can see on the left, we're able to associate a shot report in a folder, and then any associated documents associated with that blast record can be stored in that same location. What's nice about this is we have access to these Office services across all devices. I can pull up, anything on my OneDrive or my SharePoint or other options right on my phone or on my iPad, on my computer, and anybody else can do that too. It's shareable across all the platforms. And so we've done other things as well, as like setting up a training portal where, documents across our company, everybody's companies are different and laid out different, but ours tends to be kind of fragmented and in different mining areas across the country. And so it's good to have a single repository where we can all share our data and have a resource, one place where we can go access resources, and it's not siloed out and separated in our company. And so, a really important part about the data that also falls under Office is the visualization or the analytics. And so, by storing this data in a digital manner in a cloud setting, then we have the ability to pull this data. The data can be on our reports, can be loaded up in real time. Every time a report's generated, the data is updated, and then the analytics can be updated in real time. And so this is a really cool slide, just that it allows you to see on the right where you can potentially, in using the analytics of Power BI, we can locate holes based on their latitude and longitude. We're able to define, in this particular one, on the top we look at wet hole locations. So that's where the wet holes were, and the size and the color of the circle is the amount of water that was in the hole. The piece below that, it talks about, again, the hole locations being laid out, but this is where the top was broken up. And then the graphics below are really just, all the options, and not even all of them, but just the ways that your data can be displayed. And again, you have the ability with these dashboards to see that information in real time, to get that information, to track your KPIs and the things that are important to you. And again, that information is shareable across your company and even with your customers. And so let's see, are we ready for the next poll?
Yeah, so we have another poll coming up. It's live now.
Okay.
Just I think the curiosity of this poll is essentially, we all know that Office is a popular platform, but how many of you is kind of using it, and it will also be good to know who is not using it. So at this point of time, it's just, again, everybody is using it, it seems.
Okay. Well, and that's, I've used Office for a long time. I think we all have, obviously. I just never realized these things were out there. So you may have run across this and been, recognized the opportunities here. It was something that we just stumbled upon, but it's been an extreme value to us. And so this is something very, very practical that's right in front of you that you could begin to make moves on and look into and research yourself right away. And so that's just something that I wanted to share, and just take a chance that maybe somebody else hadn't seen this yet.
Awesome. We'll close the poll. Thank you, everybody.
Okay, so now I'm going to kind of transition, and this is going to be where we, begin to look at where things are going, some of the technologies that we're using to capture data differently. So on the capturing side, I'm going to challenge you a little bit with just maybe some technologies you haven't considered yet. And some of it's just not the hard charging data with loads and loads of lines and rows of data in forms of numbers. Some of it's more visual, but again, this is just really trying to open us up to see things different. And so, another neat tool that we utilize at times is a 360 camera. So cameras are amazing and they take great pictures, but at the same time, it's just what's on that screen. And sometimes we can take a single picture and we can see a whole lot more than what we thought. And so these are two examples. The one on the left is actually our Nelson Brothers app. It's a great little app, but if you download that, we do have, it looks just like this. This is a screenshot from my phone, but we have Nelson in 360, and it's just got several images there that you can access. But this is actually shows you what you can do with a single 360 image. And so this is exactly what it would be like on my phone or your phone. And so this is a picture of a quarry. It's a single image that was taken. It looks like a video, but it's, you're in control. So when you pull this image up on your phone, you can spin around in your office chair. You can look up and down wherever you look, it's there. So different than a video, which is, if you want to see it again, you have to back up. This is what you're in control of. So you can look in any direction at any time and inspect or investigate. It's very good for using for training purposes and just to give an overall 360 view of your surroundings. And then this is a different way it's being used, which is similar to maybe in the real estate market, but this is basically just using a 360 image to generate multiple images, but you can pull them together to make like a 360 tour. So this is just one of our facilities, and I just walked through and just literally set up a camera on a tripod and took multiple pictures, and then just used some 360 software that's available to anybody and just generated a quick tour. It can be photos or it can even be 360 videos. So you can see people walking by, you can see machines running, operations, you can see people on a bench loading holes or hooking up shots. And that can all be just, you can navigate through there. You can put images up with little notes to tell and explain what's going on. But that's just a completely different way of viewing maybe a bench setting or a quarry operation or something like that. Construction, ditch line, where, there's a lot going on and you want to be able to navigate around and see everything. This kind of takes that to a whole nother level. So I've got the original BHAM on there for Birmingham, and this is a 360 tour like I just showed you, but this is really taking it to the next level. There's a local general contractor, Brassfield and Gorey, and they purchased one of the Boston Dynamics Spot robots, the dog. And so they took it to another level, and they also worked with Drone Deploy on this, but it's pretty neat. And you may have seen this, but so the dog or robot has a 360 camera. It utilizes, you can see the same arrows like a tour. But then it also has the ability to, it's got GPS, so it knows its exact location. It can be programmed to follow a certain path. It has LiDAR abilities, so you can scan the area and get literally just super accurate scans, 3D surveys of the site. Here they're using it for just site inspections. But that's here local in Birmingham, and I ran across the guy that was heading this up for Bassfield and Gorey and was pretty impressed. But you know, depending on what your industry is, you know, there's a lot of possibilities, but this just shows the integration of different technologies into one place that just allow you to capture a whole lot of information on a regular basis, day to day, and hopefully that helps them make better decisions. So this is just a different way, kind of utilizing the drone transition, but also the 360. So this is just for fun, but this is kind of the old school video on the tripod camcorder. And so it's probably happened to most of us if you've been around very long and you've set the old camcorder up. But with drones, now we have the ability to see things a lot differently. And they do make great videos, but they're also extremely beneficial. In this particular blast, that it performed great, except in a certain area, and it just kind of sat there, and it couldn't determine. You can see up towards the top where it's just material sitting there. Well, in this image, as we zoom in, we see there's a crack that formed, and the yellow area is the area that didn't move. But upon watching the video from an aerial perspective, we were able to see this seam. It was a granite quarry, and it was seams all through this material, but you didn't know where they were. They didn't pick up on the drill. And so as we reviewed the video, it took multiple times of reviewing this material. It finally showed where this crack appeared, and those cracks went through this formation down underneath those holes. And so as it dropped down, it just sliced across the holes and everything shifted. And you can see that in the video. So, you know, this would have been, you know, bad product or bad performance, or you didn't do it right. But when we were able to view it on the video and find the true culprit, we knew that these holes had lifted up and sat down, and it had shifted the columns. And so there was an explanation, but then it also allowed us to see on the next blast that we needed to make some adjustments and, you know, prime above and below, you know, these seams to ensure that we had a good blast. And so extremely beneficial. I know a lot of you are already using drones to video shots, but it's not just good video, it's very beneficial. So I'm going to do some switching here. I'm going to show you a YouTube video. I'm going to have to drag this over. So this is a cool video, right? It's a coal mine running, looks normal. Well, what we did is we got a little ambitious and took the 360 camera and trying to think what we could do with it. So we mounted it on the bottom of a drone. These particular operations like to see their entire permit. And so as we fly it, we have to fly more in order to see more area. And so we were able to take like basically a single flight with a 360 camera, and it allows you to, as you watch the video, pan around and look in any direction you want. And the quality is super good. So look down here, and it's like 1440, and you know, so it's extremely clear. And you're able to fly this and not, you know, only see one area, but you're able to inspect roads, berms, benches, ditches, ponds, you know, a blast area, progression of the entire mine site as you're going. So you're just able to navigate through and see how things are going, but it's in a completely different perspective. So, you know, that's just a neat example, I think, of just combining different technologies. Drones are awesome. You know, never thought of a 360 camera until, you know, crossed my path, and you just tried to find out how we can merge some of these technologies. So I'm going to close this one and open another one. So this one's nice in that this one we captured a blast. So it's not really much different than a normal drone video, but just allows you to see some of the beautiful country around, and also just, see a different perspective if you had a different angle. With the camera, you might be able to get a different vantage point or get closer to it. But again, just a different perspective. So now I want to look at using technology to view data differently. So we were looking at how can we capture it differently, but now I just want to look at how can we view it differently. And I know the last slide was viewing it differently as well, but it was also capturing it in a different manner with the camera under the drone. And so obviously with the drone imagery and the processing that are available now and the analytics, we're able to, view things a lot differently. So with the drone visualization and, the software out there like Straos offers, with a single flight, you can do multiple projects at one time. So we can do fragmentation, we can do volumes, we can do swell factors, we can do muck pile movement. There's just, we can do collar deviations. And so with a single flight now, and then the technologies and software that are available, the platforms like Straos, you can do just so much more with a single flight. And that's the same with our data. Is like if we collect it one time the right way, then we don't have to collect it multiple times, the wrong way, and then not be able to use it. So that's the goal, is just efficiencies and being able to do things to, use our time more wisely, but then get more out of it. And so just another way of viewing data differently, if you process data from a drone or from anything, how can we view it different? It's like, well, can we print it out? It's something that's 3D, we can print it, get a printer, and the top right picture is actually just like a high wall. It's like, can we print it out? What's the benefit? I don't know, but it looks cool. And if you can, it allows you to see something a little differently, then I'm game, And so this is, again, just moving on with that. So you capturing this data with technology, you're creating environments. And I ran across some guys from Gillette College in Wyoming, and they're training miners and stuff. And so they have dove into the virtual world. And so they were using LiDAR to scan mines and pits and equipment to create these virtual worlds. And we talked with them, and it was really cool what they were doing. And, this is, it looks kind of, cartoonish, I guess. But again, this is all interactive by the user. And so a person can put on a headset, and then you can project that on a TV. Multiple people can view it and see it, but you can also walk through this and see different pieces of it. As we move forward in the video, you can see this is a scanned pit area. So they scan this with LiDAR, and then they overlaid it with an image, so it looks like it's still a cartoon, but it's actually a surveyed pit area. And so these are just different things they can do. They can analyze like the berm. They can talk about safety. They can talk about where to be and not to be, which is where they go next. So don't get between a piece of equipment and a high wall. And so this is all virtual. And again, just through information sharing, it was neat to just see them embarking on that for training purposes. But then also, I was able to share some stuff with them. So I think we're going to our last slide, or I'm sorry, not slide, our last poll before our last slide.
Great. So we'll release the third poll. We'll give it a minute for this one.
I guess I should have added the Office platform in there as well, but this is kind of just really focusing on challenging you to think outside the box and find some technologies that, maybe allow you to see things a little differently, give you a different perspective.
Yeah. So we have a pretty good mix on this one. Definitely, I think it's virtual and augmented reality is very, it still kind of feels futuristic, but I think there is a lot of applications and real use cases can be built. One is on the safety training side, which you showed, which is immensely useful for the mining environment, creating using a digital twin to replicate, really useful. I was not even sure about 360 cameras, but now there's real practical applications there. I thought it was mostly a consumer types of applications that, you can do a lot of things. So we'll close the poll. It's a pretty mixed balance between 360 and VR and AR here.
Okay. Well, there's a lot of good information out there. YouTube's a great resource for learning more about 360 cameras, anything 3D printers, AR and VR. Just dig into it and look into it. But just stepping off into the virtual and the augmented reality, we took one final step, and I say final for today's presentation, but it's just the beginning for us. But I really think it has some amazing applications in the future. As we get better with it, as we make things easier and faster. But we were able to, again, take survey data from a drone. We can process it and do analysis and get all these wonderful measurements. But it was like, what else can we do with it? That's a ton of useful information. What else can we do with it? And so we embarked on another journey, and I'll show you that right now. And so what this is going to show is actually a drone survey of a quarry. And so this is an actual quarry. These are actual images. It's from a drone survey. But it was like, there's got to be something more than just being able to process this data somewhere and that's it. So we dug around, and basically we're like, well, what if we put it in a virtual world? What if we create the drone space where we can interact with it, where we can be a part of it? And so we plugged it in and basically used the 3D survey and put it through a gaming engine and created this environment that is visually a very good representation, actual imagery from a quarry, and then we can interact with it. And so as we began to create the environment, we began to have other ideas, and we really just scratched the surface, but we had the ability to do measurements. This is a surveyed image. It's to scale. And so everything in that image is measurable. And by having the drone survey, as opposed to just a created virtual world, we have actual information. We have actual visuals to see what the bench looked like. Was there a line on the face? Did our blasters paint their line? Were the drill cutting piles adequate? Or, if there was a hole that didn't have drill cuttings, well, that had mud in it, how did we load that hole? Was there a blowout? And so we can go back and evaluate that shot in a way that we never could before. We're able to just interact with this environment. We're able to measure it. We're able to measure burdens and spacings, face burdens. Just anything that we want to measure is measurable. And so we just basically thought outside the box and kind of stepped into it and made it happen. But so basically any kind of measurement you want to do, you can do in here. Basically, we've got these poles in where we can get a separation between the poles, but then also any elevation change based on where we put them. And you'll notice down in the pit, we have a little red column down there. And I'll show you what that looks like here in just a second. It's going to go ahead and move forward. So we've got a little blaster plunger. And when we push it down, we're able to switch our environment from the pre-shot to the post-shot. So we can visualize the fragmentation of the shot, the movement of the shot, but our poles are actually, they can move from one environment to the other. So we're able to, leave a pole on the back row holes from the pre-shot, which is what we did here. And then we switch to the post-shot, it stays in the same location, and we can measure back break, we can measure trough drop, we can measure how far the pile moved out, we can measure the size of rock and material in the blast. And we're able to just visually look at anything that we want to on that blast. We could do this with cameras for sure. But getting these viewpoints is, going to be difficult, and being able to measure is just extremely valuable. And you may seem like this is a huge leap to get to, an environment that you can move around in and measure in from a drone survey. But you'd be surprised how quickly and easily it can be done with just a little research, a little digging, and just focusing on it and taking the time to do it. And so it wasn't a heavy lift. It wasn't an extreme expense or anything like that. And I know there's discussions about this virtual stuff is it bugs me. I don't like it. But I just envision sitting in a quarry room where you've got a virtual system set up in the office, and you come in for your meeting and you have your shots that you've surveyed and you've loaded up into this environment, and you're able to put on a headset and then you project that to the TV. So one person wears it and can measure. Everybody else just watches the TV like you're watching the screen, except the user that's got the headset on navigates. And so, this is just kind of the tip of the iceberg. But I hope you've never seen anything like this before, so that you're challenged to, go down this path, go down another path, go down a different path, and just, think outside the box. And I really want to encourage everybody that's on here to take the time to clear your slate and just take some time to think differently, to just think about the opportunities that are there to do something different. How can we do something better? What are the holdups? What are the bottlenecks in collecting data or in my workflows that I need to eliminate? And how can I do that? And just take time to look at technology, look at, just the opportunity to, make things better, because there's a lot of resources out there, and it just takes people like yourselves to, take time to focus on it, think about it, and just investigate what the possibilities are and how we can marry that with what we do. And so that's going to wrap it up for me today. And I just want to first, before we take questions for me, ask you what you're going to do. And so just hope today you were challenged. I hope you take something away that's very practical, but also, everything here is something that you can look at today, tomorrow, and see where you can apply it. And these are just a few things that I've just run across. And so I hope you pursue things and find new things that'll help you in your business and to do what you do better. So thank you.
Well, thank you, Seth. This has been amazing. My mind has been completely blown away from the last AR, VR data augmentation together, and what new way you can see the data. That is amazing. We have a lot of questions coming up, so we'll get started. We have a good amount of time left to do Q&A, so feel free to post your questions in the question box, and we will get to as much as questions today. But I have one question to start with here, Seth. In your role, you're really looking at kind of, what are the new and innovations and the technologies are out there so that you can implement. But a lot of the times, I think the bridge to cross is how do you make it practical into day-to-day applications to the field personnel who a lot of the times there are time constraint or also the learning constraints are there. What type of practices you put so that the implementation of the technology and the data culture becomes more prominent at the field level?
Yeah, that's a really that's probably the biggest hurdle and the biggest challenge to what I'm doing is, uh, in the description of kind of my role now that you started with, there tends to be a big gap between the guys in the field that are maybe on the bench loading holes or the guys that are, operating in the quarries. And, people like myself that are like looking for new ways to do things, innovative ways to do things, technologies. And then, sometimes it seems like there's a big gap. And, obviously, you can't take a 360 camera and go take it and give it to a guy and just say, here, use this, but my role is kind of, is there a fit? And, a lot of times there's not, but it's still something that, like a feather, just keep it in your hat and you just know it's there and you just look for ways in the future where you can maybe marry that in. But, really it's just looking for efficiencies and the right thing. And if you find something that you think would be helpful and work well, like using the apps for our guys in the field, and you just have to one, keep in mind having a good understanding of where they're at and what they're used to and how they do things. You have to have a really good understanding of that first, and then you can take the technology and help it to make it what you want so that those guys have an easy transition. And so, before anything, if you're going to ask somebody to do something, you need to really understand what they're doing. And then, like with the apps that we've built, they were built by us. And so it was customizable. So we're able to customize that for them. And so in my role as well, it's working out the kinks and making an efficient process or flow to use the technology. And then it's just taking the time to train them properly. And so we didn't make any big, huge, drastic changes, but we just implemented some new ways of capturing data, spent time with them. We understood what they needed. And so we were able to, meet that need in a way that wasn't like just completely overwhelming to them. We just did things a little differently. And now we went from, collecting data that we weren't able to use, weren't able to share, weren't able to analyze and do stuff with, to being able to do everything just by making that one switch. So it's well worth the transition, but you kind of have to pick and choose what's going to work for you the most. And a lot of it doesn't, just apply right now, but it's still something I hold on to and pursue and dig into.
Oh, that's amazing. So we have several questions coming in here. I'll be moderating one by one. So to begin with the question here, I'll start to pick. So I think there's a general question more on the office side, what and how. There is a lot of opportunities, as you pointed out, but training and resources are the key to understand and the practice. So which I totally agree on this point. I think, is there any resources set that anybody can use directly, which is readily available? We will put that in the notes when we send that the webinar summary email.
Yeah, really, when we began to open up the Office platform and the apps that were available, the apps we developed were through Power Apps, and it's just a simplified way of creating an app. And again, it's just for data collection, and we kind of probably pushed the limits of that because getting blast data in all the pieces and all the formats and all the considerations in creating an accurate data blast report, it became a big hurdle. So, but we worked, just researched some Power Apps and worked with some developers with Power Apps, and it was an investment. I'm not going to say it was easy, but depending on what kind of data you want to collect, whether it's for, maintenance or blast audits or site audits or, anything like that, collecting blast data, anything that you want to capture, the apps are a very easy way to do that. There's some great groups that you can, work with to develop. I had an engineer working with me, and, send him to some trainings. And so he did a lot of internal apps that were simpler. And then the more complex stuff, we would just work with developers, and it really it just changed our whole world though. And it was built for us by us. And so we got exactly what we wanted. And so that was a big key on that. So really just digging in, I mean, literally just researching some of the pieces and how they work. You'll see really, really quickly how fast you can get into it and how much it can help you. I hope that answered it.
Yeah, that's amazing. And we have more questions here related to the virtual augmented reality. And of course, the question is, it has a lot of potential for underground operations versus a 360 camera, which is more geared for the surface operations. I think the question is more geared towards clarifying VR and AR is more for the underground, and 360 is more for the surface. That's the question here.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that. I deal very little with underground now. In the past, more so, but I think as far as the AR, VR, and then 360 and where they work, I think both can work in both environments. I mean, the 360 would be great in an underground because you're completely surrounded. If you take a 360 shot, standing out in a field, it's going to be pretty boring. But because you're just going to have an entire image of sky and field. But underground, that changes a lot. So as far as like the AR and VR, it's really just, what you want to see and what you want to create. The images we did with the drone on the surface that we turned into that virtual environment, that would be more difficult to me underground. Is just getting that survey. But if you have the means of creating that 3D survey underground, whether it's with LiDAR or even using a drone, then yeah, I think both would work in both environments. But I guess that's up to you to try it out in your underground or surface and see what works and what doesn't work.
Yeah, definitely. That's one way to find out. Another question here that I will pick is from Bill Algood. The question is, can you measure throughout the entire mucking process to get the fragmentation of the whole muck pile?
Not in that virtual environment. I mean, you would have to do multiple flights. So, when you do a survey with a drone, it's a snapshot still. It's a big, beautiful snapshot. It gives a lot of information, but it's still a snapshot. And I understand the need for, really analyzing fragmentation throughout the muck pile, because the surface is just a snapshot, and it doesn't by any means paint the whole picture. You probably have the ability, some of the cameras that are out there today have like LiDAR functions, and, when you snap a picture, it's actually scanning on some level. So I think that, you have the ability to possibly take more pictures with a phone of a muck pile face as it's dug out and process those images for fragmentation. But if you're asking about bringing that into the virtual and measuring, it's just limited by what you fly and produce as a 3D survey image, and then converting that over into a virtual, which that would probably be a lot of work for not a lot. I'd probably rather take pictures with my phone or something like that and use another process to try and get fragmentation, or put something up where you're getting continuous pictures.
Yeah. And just to kind of add more here on this topic, there is a way to kind of, get the entire mucking process, which is you're getting the whole drone shot, which is a surface view. But if you want to further augment for each load, as truck is getting loaded with more material, there are options, and that does require a little bit of more presence while the truck is loaded. So you can take photos through drone of the truck bed and get a fragmentation for each truckload. When it's getting into the crusher, after the primary crusher, you can get cameras which can monitor the fragmentation real time as well. So there is a way to get the entire mucking process, fragmentation as well. So we have another question here in terms of the underground environment, the limited exposure of light, how the AR, VR can function. So the question is, will the LiDAR data can be utilized to simulate in virtual reality?
Yeah, and I won't claim to be an expert or proficient in LiDAR. We've used, LiDAR scanners in the past for high walls and things like that in the surface, but I know they just generate points in a point cloud. And so we can generate a very detailed point cloud. And then similar to the VR training video that showed the mine setting, that was just overlaid with imagery or basically a coloration, but the point cloud was accurate. And so it was LiDAR scan. So it was a very accurate representation. It was just the details and the coloring of the trucks and the walls were specific to, just how they designed that. So I imagine you could do the same thing with LiDAR underground. Like if you're creating scans, of drift or a tunnel or a raise or something like that, you could, overlay that LiDAR scan, and I'm not familiar with that process, but overlay that scan basically with an imagery that would allow you to see it. And it wouldn't have to be actual imagery. You could probably just, create a mesh or something like that that allows you to get the details of, what you want to see.
Yep. Well, yeah, that's very much possible. I think it's just a matter of how you apply the data. So we'll pick one last question. We are almost at the top of the hour here. The question is, I think, very relevant. It has received most votes to bring this question to light. How accurate is your fragmentation measurement, given it's just the surface profile you are seeing?
Well, you're exactly right. It's just what you see. So, you always need to validate data. And so, I think it's important when it is what it is. If you have a surface image, with the drones, you're able to capture, 3D images. So it doesn't just capture, a flat surface picture of a rock where you get certain measurements, but you're able to get some of the shape of the rock. So that does help. But I mean, if you want to know accuracy, honestly, you just have to validate it. And so you can look at comparing that with, different means, physically measuring rocks, painting rocks, and that are within your survey range, and doing the validation. I know there's a lot of imagery, and it looks like, big rocks, small rocks. You don't know what's under the pile. You don't, if it's fines around it, you don't know what the shape of that rock is underneath it. So, it's just as you look at it with your eyes, that's all it's looking at. And that's not always the most accurate representation, but it's a representation. And, if you're doing multiple fragmentations, of shot to shot to shot, then you can see, I think that's a data point. So you can see the surface of this blast, did it improve or not improve? And so if you're getting larger material or smaller material on the rock and it adjusts as you modify designs or timing or loading or something like that, then you can get a general trend. But I probably wouldn't use just the surface to define my success or performance of my entire blast. I would probably want to, get, multiple pictures across the face as the muck pile's going on. To get probably the most realistic, it would be, having a system set up where you can, get images as it's either, coming off, the crusher or being dumped in a truck, so, the more data you can get as the muck is being dug out would be the most accurate. But if you're just, if you just want to find out if it's processing correctly and the fragmentation's correct, just go out and mark some rocks and paint them yourself and measure them and see how they compare with the survey data. And that's what I would do, is just validate it in a different manner that is right.
Amazing. Thank you, Seth, for the Q&A session. So we will wrap up our session now. I want to thank our guest here, guest speaker, Seth. Thank you so much for doing an amazing presentation. I certainly learned a lot about different ways to not only look at the data, but how much visualization plays a critical role here. And we as a company, as Astraeos, we put a heavy emphasis on visualization, but it opened up a lot of perspectives for me. What are the tools are out there? And certainly, I believe it has given perspectives for the audience, how they can go and apply into some capacity. So thank you very much for the presentation today.